The first time I realized my father had lied to me for my entire life was 6 months after his funeral. And the proof was carved into stone. I remember standing in the cemetery on a cold October morning, holding fresh white lilies. The grass was still wet from the night's rain. The world felt unusually quiet. My father had been gone for half a year, yet every Sunday I still found myself driving to his grave. I suppose grief has habits. Some habits are hard to break. I knelt beside the headstone and brushed away a few fallen leaves. That's when I noticed it. A tiny bronze plaque attached near the base. I had never seen it before. Maybe it had always been there. Maybe grief had blinded me. Either way, I leaned closer. And my entire world changed. Because engraved on that plaque were 6 words. In loving memory of Daniel Brooks. I froze. My father's name wasn't Daniel Brooks. It was William Carter. Or at least that's what I'd believed for 32 years. My hand started shaking. I stared at the plaque. Then at the headstone. Then back again. The cemetery suddenly felt colder. Much colder. Who was Daniel Brooks? And why was that name attached to my father's grave? I had no idea that question would unravel everything I thought I knew about my family. My name is Emma Carter. Or at least that's what I thought my name was. My father died at 68 from heart failure. He wasn't famous. He wasn't rich. He wasn't powerful. But he was everything to me. My mother died when I was 11. After that, Dad became both parents. He packed school lunches. Braided my hair terribly. Attended every soccer game. Every graduation. Every heartbreak. Every milestone. He was my safe place. My hero. The one person I trusted completely. Which is why discovering another name on his grave felt like betrayal. That afternoon I drove straight to my Aunt Linda's house. Dad's younger sister. The only surviving member of his immediate family. When she opened the door, she immediately knew something was wrong. Emma? I held up a photo I'd taken of the plaque. Who's Daniel Brooks? The color drained from her face. Instantly. It happened so fast I nearly missed it. What? I showed her the photo. She stared at it. Then looked away. That tiny reaction changed everything. Because it wasn't confusion. It was recognition. Aunt Linda. My voice shook. Who is this? She swallowed. Hard. Then forced a smile. It must be a mistake. A mistake. On a grave? The answer sounded ridiculous. And she knew it. I could see it in her eyes. For the first time in my life. My aunt looked afraid. That night I couldn't sleep. Questions kept circling inside my head. Who was Daniel Brooks? Why did Aunt Linda react that way? And why had nobody ever mentioned the name before? Around midnight I opened my father's old file cabinet. The one he always kept locked. I felt guilty doing it. But something told me answers were hiding somewhere. I wasn't wrong. Inside a folder marked personal I found several documents. Most were ordinary. Insurance papers. Tax forms. Medical records. Then I found something strange. A birth certificate. Folded neatly at the bottom. The name at the top wasn't William Carter. It was Daniel Brooks. My heart nearly stopped. The birth date matched. The birthplace matched. Everything matched. Except the name. I read it 3 times. Then 5. Then 10. Each time hoping I'd misunderstood. I hadn't. My father's birth certificate belonged to Daniel Brooks. Not William Carter. Which meant only one thing. My father had changed his identity. And never told me. The next morning I called Aunt Linda again. This time she didn't answer. I left a voicemail. No response. I sent a text. Nothing. For 3 days she disappeared completely. The silence felt like confirmation. The more she avoided me, the more convinced I became that something terrible was hidden in our family's past. Then another clue appeared. A much worse one. While sorting through Dad's belongings, I discovered an old photograph tucked inside a Bible. The picture was faded. At least 40 years old. A young version of my father stood beside an unfamiliar woman. They looked happy. Very happy. His arm wrapped around her shoulder. Her head resting against his chest. On the back was a handwritten message. Forever yours, Sarah. My stomach dropped. Sarah wasn't my mother. I'd never heard that name before. Not once. Not ever. Suddenly another possibility emerged. A terrifying one. What if my father wasn't hiding from someone? What if he was hiding something? Something unforgivable. Over the next few weeks the clues multiplied. A second photograph. A hotel receipt from another state. Letters with missing pages. Phone numbers with no names. Every discovery painted the same picture. A secret life. A hidden past. A version of my father I didn't recognize. And every answer seemed to create two more questions. Then one evening I found something that shattered what little trust remained. A locked metal box hidden behind insulation in the attic. Inside were dozens of old letters. Most were addressed to Daniel Brooks. Not William Carter. Daniel Brooks. The same name from the grave. The same name from the birth certificate. The same name nobody wanted to discuss. And the first letter began with 5 chilling words. If they ever find you. I stopped breathing. Because for the first time I wasn't wondering who my father really was. I was wondering what he had done. And the truth I uncovered next would make me question everything I believed about the man who raised me. The first letter I opened made my hands tremble. If they ever find you, promise me you won't come back. I read the sentence 3 times. Then a fourth. The paper was yellow with age. The handwriting belonged to a woman. Sarah. The same woman from the photograph. The same woman standing beside my father decades ago. The same woman who clearly meant something important to him. My chest tightened. Every clue was beginning to point toward the same conclusion. A secret family. A hidden life. A betrayal. And with every letter I opened, that conclusion felt more certain. One letter spoke about missing him. Another mentioned a little boy named Michael. A third referred to the sacrifice we made. But the pages were incomplete. Many were missing. Important parts had been torn away. Almost as if someone had deliberately hidden the truth. For weeks I buried myself in those letters. I stopped seeing friends. Stopped answering calls. Stopped living my normal life. The deeper I dug, the more convinced I became that my father wasn't the man I thought he was. Then one Saturday morning I received a phone call. The caller ID showed an unknown number. Normally I would have ignored it. Something told me not to. Hello? There was silence. Then an elderly woman's voice. Is this Emma Carter? Yes. The woman hesitated. I think we need to talk about Daniel Brooks. My heart nearly stopped. I sat straight up. Who are you? My name is Sarah. The room began spinning. Sarah. The woman from the photographs. The woman from the letters. The woman who apparently knew my father before I was born. For several seconds I couldn't speak. Finally I whispered. Where are you? 3 days later I was driving across state lines. Toward a small town I'd never visited before. Toward answers. Or so I thought. The town looked frozen in time. Old brick buildings. Empty sidewalks. A diner on the corner. Sarah lived in a modest white house surrounded by rose bushes. She looked older than I expected. Late 70s. Gentle eyes. The kind of face that carried decades of memories. The moment she opened the door and saw me, she started crying. That made me uncomfortable immediately. Because guilty people cry too. And at that point, I was almost certain she was part of whatever secret my father had hidden. We sat across from each other in her living room. A framed photograph rested on a nearby shelf. I recognized my father instantly. Except he looked 25 years old. And happy. Very happy. My stomach turned. You knew him? She nodded. I did. As Daniel Brooks? Her expression softened. Yes. The answer hit me harder than I expected. For some reason, hearing someone actually say it made everything feel real. I swallowed. Why did he change his name? Sarah looked away. I can't answer that. Anger surged through me. Everyone keeps saying that. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. No. I stood up. No, I'm tired of hearing that. She flinched. But I didn't stop. My father lied to me my entire life. Tears streamed down my face. I deserve the truth. Sarah remained silent. That silence felt like another betrayal. Then I asked the question I had been carrying for weeks. Were you his wife? The room became completely still. Sarah slowly nodded. I felt like I'd been punched. My legs nearly gave out. The letters. The photographs. The hidden name. Everything suddenly made sense. Or so I thought. My father had another wife. Another life. Another family. My voice shook with rage. What about my mother? Sarah closed her eyes. I mistook her sadness for guilt. You don't understand. Then explain it. For the first time, her voice cracked. I can't. That answer destroyed any remaining doubt. I stormed out of the house. I drove back to my hotel shaking with anger. The entire drive I kept replaying memories of my father. Birthday parties. Graduations. Family vacations. Every happy moment now felt poisoned. Who had he really been? The next morning things got even worse. A man knocked on my hotel room door. He looked about 45. Dark hair. Tired eyes. Nervous expression. The moment he introduced himself, my world shifted again. My name is Michael. The name from the letters. The little boy. Now grown. I stared at him. What do you want? He looked heartbroken. I think we're family. The words made me sick. Family. Half-brother. The conclusion arrived instantly. My father had abandoned them. Abandoned Sarah. Abandoned Michael. Then started a new life with my mother. A selfish man. A dishonest man. A liar. The more Michael talked, the more certain I became. He showed me photographs. Birthday cards. Old memories. My father appeared in many of them. Not often. But enough. Enough to prove he'd stayed connected. Enough to make me believe he'd been living between two families. I couldn't take it anymore. That evening I called Aunt Linda. For the first time in weeks, she answered. Emma. Her voice sounded exhausted. I didn't care. I know everything. Silence. He had another wife. Silence. He had another son. Still silence. Then finally she whispered. No. The calmness in her voice caught me off guard. What do you mean no? You don't know everything. I laughed bitterly. Then tell me. For several seconds all I heard was her breathing. Then she said something that changed everything. Your father never abandoned anyone. I froze. What? He spent 50 years protecting them. My heart started pounding. Protecting them? The words didn't fit. Not with the story I'd built in my mind. Not with the evidence. Not with the betrayal I was sure existed. Then Aunt Linda spoke the sentence that shattered every assumption I'd made. Daniel Brooks died when he was 26 years old. I couldn't breathe. What? Your father wasn't hiding from his past, Emma. Her voice broke. He was hiding for someone else's future. Suddenly nothing made sense anymore. Not the letters. Not Sarah. Not Michael. Not the name on the grave. Not any of it. And when Aunt Linda finally revealed what happened 50 years earlier, I realized the man I had spent months judging might have been the most selfless person I'd ever known. I sat frozen on the edge of my hotel bed. My phone trembled in my hand. Aunt Linda's words echoed through my mind. Daniel Brooks died when he was 26 years old. Nothing made sense. I stared out the window at the dark parking lot below. Cars passed. People walked by. Life continued. Yet it felt like my entire reality had stopped. What are you talking about? I whispered. Aunt Linda took a shaky breath. Then she finally told me the story my father had spent 50 years protecting. Daniel Brooks was your father's best friend. I blinked. What? They grew up together. I couldn't speak. They were closer than brothers. Suddenly the room felt very small. Very quiet. Very different. Because for the first time, the story was moving in a direction I never expected. Then why did he use Daniel's name? Linda's voice broke. Because Daniel asked him to. I closed my eyes. Trying to understand. Trying to keep up. Trying to fit this new information into the version of events I'd spent months believing. I couldn't. Not yet. Then Linda told me what happened. 50 years earlier, Daniel Brooks and Sarah were engaged. Young. In love. Planning a future together. Sarah was pregnant with Michael. Life was supposed to be beginning. Instead, tragedy arrived. One rainy night Daniel was killed in a terrible accident while driving home from work. Just like that. Gone. 26 years old. A fiancé. A future father. A son. A friend. Gone. I covered my mouth. Suddenly the photograph of Sarah and Daniel felt completely different. No scandal. No affair. No betrayal. Just love interrupted by tragedy. But one question remained. If Daniel died, why had my father become Daniel Brooks? Linda answered before I could ask. Because Daniel's family was in danger. I frowned. What does that mean? Linda hesitated. Then continued. Daniel's father had accumulated enormous gambling debts. Dangerous debts. The kind that attracted dangerous people. After Daniel died, several men began searching for anyone connected to the Brooks family. Including Sarah. Including the unborn baby. Including Daniel's elderly mother. The situation became frightening very quickly. Threats. Harassment. Fear. Then something unexpected happened. My father stepped in. At the time he was still William Carter. A young man grieving the loss of his best friend. A man who refused to watch Daniel's family suffer. According to Linda, my father spent months helping Sarah and Daniel's mother stay safe. Driving them to appointments. Paying bills. Fixing problems. Doing anything he could. Then one night Daniel's mother made a request. A request that would change every life involved. Promise me Daniel won't disappear. Those had been her words. Promise me Daniel won't disappear. I felt tears building. Linda continued. The older woman was terrified. Terrified that her son's memory would vanish. Terrified that Michael would grow up without any connection to his father. Terrified that everything Daniel had been would simply fade away. And my father made a promise. A promise he would spend the rest of his life keeping. At first it seemed impossible. Then something happened. Daniel's legal documents became tangled in a series of clerical errors related to the estate. Names, records, paperwork, confusion. My father used those circumstances to help protect the family. But somewhere along the way, the line between helping Daniel's legacy and carrying it himself began to blur. Eventually William Carter quietly adopted portions of Daniel's identity in certain records connected to the family. Not for money. Not for gain. Not to deceive. But to shield Sarah and Michael from people who continued searching for the Brooks family. I sat silently, trying to absorb it. Trying to process the enormity of what I was hearing. Then Linda said something I'll never forget. Your father spent 50 years making sure a dead man's son never felt abandoned. The words shattered me. Completely. Because suddenly every clue had a different meaning. Every single one. The letters. The photographs. The hidden documents. The secrecy. The silence. None of it pointed toward betrayal. It pointed toward sacrifice. I began crying. Harder than I had cried at the funeral. Because grief is painful. But realizing you've misunderstood someone you love. That hurts in a different way. A deeper way. The next morning I drove back to Sarah's house. When she opened the door, she immediately knew. I understood. I finally understood. Before she could speak, I wrapped my arms around her. And we both started crying. I'm sorry, I whispered. Over and over. I'm so sorry. Sarah held my hand and led me inside. Michael was there too. For the first time, I looked at him differently. Not as evidence of a secret family. Not as proof of betrayal. But as a man whose life had been protected by my father's kindness. A kindness I had mistaken for guilt. For hours we talked. Shared stories. Shared memories. Shared pieces of a man we all loved. Michael laughed through tears as he told me something. When I was 8, I asked him why he kept showing up. I smiled weakly. What did he say? Michael's eyes filled. He told me, because nobody should grow up thinking they're forgotten. I broke down again. Because that sounded exactly like my father. Exactly. Months earlier I had been convinced he was hiding shame. The truth was far more beautiful. He was hiding compassion. A few weeks later, Sarah and Michael came with me to the cemetery. We stood together in silence. 3 people connected by one extraordinary man. I looked down at the grave. Then at the small bronze plaque. Daniel Brooks. For the first time, I wasn't angry. I understood why it was there. Not because my father was pretending to be someone else. Because he spent half a century making sure someone else wasn't forgotten. I placed fresh flowers beside the headstone. Then smiled through tears. You kept your promise, Dad. The wind moved gently through the trees. For a moment it felt as if he was there. Listening. The lesson my father left behind wasn't written on the headstone. It wasn't hidden in letters. Or photographs. Or secrets. It was much simpler than that. Sometimes the greatest acts of love are the ones nobody ever sees. The sacrifices nobody applauds. The promises nobody knows exist. My father spent 50 years carrying a burden that wasn't his. Not because he had to. Because he chose to. And that's when I realized something. The name on my father's headstone wasn't his real name. But the love behind it was the most real thing I'd ever known.